Coming up next, we focus on health with what doctors call the future of cancer treatment and diagnosis. Personalized medicine tailors therapies to individual patients and their specific types of cancer. We'll hear from the region's leading oncologists, share personal stories from survivors, and discover more about the specific treatments, including gamma knife radiosurgery with Lehigh Valley Health Network and immunotherapy with St. Luke's University Health Network. It's all starting right now on Focus. Focus is for our community.
Focus showcases the people,
The places and the issues that matter to you.
Focus on what matters.
You never know what you're going to see when you tune into Focus.
Support for Focus is provided by Univest, Banking, Insurance, Investments, Fellowship Community, Continuing Care with Spirit, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. I'm Laura McHugh. In this episode, we focus on health and the future of cancer treatment and diagnosis. Doctors call personalized or precision medicine a silver bullet approach to treating cancer. It's medicine based on our genes and on the specific genes found within a tumor. We begin this special report with Focus reporter Brittany Garzillo. Brittany?
Laura, doctors at Lehigh Valley Health Network use a procedure that's changing the lives of patients diagnosed with cancer. The procedure, known as gamma knife radiosurgery, is non-invasive and often allows patients to return home the same day of treatment without the side effects of chemotherapy. Inside her home in Allentown, 59-year-old Sharon Thompson sings and dances with her 3-year-old grandson, Kendrick.
No more monkeys jumping on the bed.
Something she couldn't do about 2 years ago.
I couldn't breathe on my own. I had an oxygen machine in here, would have had a 50-foot cord. I had 24-hour oxygen. I had stage 4 terminal lung cancer with less than 6 months to live.
In 2014, Sharon found out her cancer spread through both her lungs, into several bones, and into her brain.
The doctors told me at that time I had a strong heart. And at that time I said, I'm not dead yet, I'm gonna fight.
Sharon's fight led her to Lehigh Valley Health Network and Dr. Elliot Friedman, the network's chief of hematology oncology.
Every patient's cancer will have specific properties, and that will give us clues as to how to treat them.
In Sharon's case, her treatment included oral medication, radiation, and a procedure called gamma knife radiosurgery.
We call it gamma knife radiosurgery because it's a radiation procedure with neurosurgical precision.
Dr. Allison McIntosh is a radiation oncologist at Lehigh Valley Health Network and the medical director of the Gamma Knife program.
For Sharon, she had 2 very small brain metastases, and it was really important that when she was staged that they did an MRI of the brain and they caught them before they were too big to be treated with the more precise techniques.
Gamma knife is pinpoint radiation, but rather than getting 10 to 15 treatments and treating the whole brain with side effects from that therapy, the patient gets 1 treatment that isolates that single tumor.
There's no cutting in gamma knife, there's no surgery. There are 192 separate beams that all converge at a center point where the radiation treatment is based.
According to Dr. McIntosh, the procedure can take anywhere from approximately 30 minutes to an hour and a half.
They go home the same day, which is really a good benefit to the patients.
After a single treatment, Dr. McIntosh says that Sharon's brain is now cancer-free.
This is Sharon's most recent scan, about 2 years from completion of her gamma knife procedure, and where she previously had metastases, there's still just a tiny bit of a scar, but no active disease.
If you look at cancer therapy 20 years ago, we were using chemotherapy almost routinely on everybody. Now we're using more of a silver bullet, a target directed at that patient's cancer, so that we're treating them specifically without the horrible side effects of chemotherapy.
Where's that one go? That looks like that goes there.
Today, Dr. McIntosh says the cancer throughout the rest of Sharon's body is in prolonged remission.
Right now, no walker, no cane, no oxygen. And I can talk. I can even sing right now. No more Kendricks jumping on the bed. I'm claiming total healing. Total healing. Because I feel like God is going to use this mess as a message.
A message she shares with anyone diagnosed with a terminal illness.
Focus on living. Any quality of life is too precious not to fight for it. Find something to live for and fight for that, no matter what it is. Yay! Say yay!
For Focus, I'm Brittany Garzillo reporting. In pursuit of providing new innovative cancer treatments, Lehigh Valley Health Network has partnered with the Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Alliance. I'll have more details on what that means for local patients later in the show.
Thank you so much, Brittany. Next, we look at the role of clinical trials in developing new cancer treatments. As Focus reporter Grover Silcox learned, patients don't always have to travel outside of the Lehigh Valley to receive cutting-edge therapies. Grover?
Thanks, Laura. Paul Petruzzi, an avid runner who competed in marathons, was in his mid-50s when cancer struck him for the second time. The melanoma that had been successfully removed 8 years earlier had returned and metastasized to his brain, liver, and neck. He participated in a clinical trial for new immunotherapy drugs at St. Luke's University Health Network that stopped the cancer and put Paul back on the road to recovery and good health.
Marathon runner Paul Petruzzi faced many a tough competitor, but none as fierce as melanoma, the tenacious cancer that pitted Paul in a race against time.
And they found I had 2 tumors in my brain.
It was melanoma that had spread from a lesion removed 12 years earlier. The brain tumors were removed, but the cancer had spread elsewhere.
I was told, you're in bad shape, you have, there's tumors there's one in your lung, there's multiple in your liver, there's one in your neck.
Paul was advised to seek a clinical trial at St. Luke's University Health Network in the Lehigh Valley, where the chief of oncology, Dr. Sanjeev Agarwala, was conducting promising clinical trials on melanoma.
The clinical trial is really a way to determine if a new treatment or a new drug is better either instead of or in addition to something we already use for a treatment.
Paul qualified for a phase 2 clinical trial of immunotherapy drugs. Frequently administered as an infusion or vaccine, immunotherapy drugs prevent the cancer from shutting down the immune system so it can continue to fight the cancer.
Things like chemotherapy that we used to use traditionally in melanoma have not been that successful, and we've learned that using immunotherapies looked much more promising than just giving people a chemical poison, which just may or may not work, which is, again, pretty normal, no other lesions.
Immunotherapy is using your body's own immune system to help fight the cancer.
At Cancer Treatment Centers of America at Eastern Regional Medical Center in Philadelphia, Dr. Ankur Parikh sees fewer side effects in patients undergoing immunotherapy.
With chemotherapy, a lot of side effects could be, hair loss, nausea, vomiting, increased risk of infections, fatigue. With immunotherapy, you don't really get a lot of that. It's basically things like diarrhea or shortness of breath.
Every 2 weeks for 2 years, Paul went to St. Luke's Cancer Center in Easton for immunotherapy. In addition to regular CAT scans and blood tests to monitor his progress, Paul was given 2 immunotherapy drugs intravenously in a blind study, which helped to prove that both drugs together were more effective than each drug by itself.
Immediately, by getting the immunology drugs, I felt better. I felt like stronger, and within 6 months, I was running road races again.
The drug stopped Paul's cancer from growing.
We're seeing successes in many patients, like Paul, who have received immunotherapy. But to be a candidate for a clinical trial, you first have to be motivated to really want to do it. And fortunately, most patients are very willing to do it, not only because they want to see if it works in their cancer, but I think more importantly, they want to try to help other people.
Paul still sees Dr. Agarwala and his team for checkups.
Thanks again. It's great to see you. Thanks for doing this.
If the cancer returns, they'll determine another therapy to attack it. But so far, the cancer has stopped growing.
And I would encourage anybody that has any form of cancer, but specifically melanoma, to look into the treatments that they have to offer. It's beautiful.
Words of advice from a man who knows how to go the distance and beat the odds. For Focus, I'm Grover Silcox reporting.
Thank you, Grover. To learn more, I'm now joined by Dr. Lee Riley, Medical Director of Oncology Clinical Integration at St. Luke's University Health Network. Dr. Riley, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Laura.
Dr. Riley, you've been working with personalized medicine, you said, for almost 30 years or more. Tell us what personalized medicine is in your own terms.
You know, it started out as just trying to figure out what caused a tumor. Then with the Human Genome Project, we started learning about all the different genes and the sequences, and now we've started to learn that there are about 500 genes that can cause cancer, and we're learning that those genes, understanding those genes and how they work, make everybody's cancer a little bit unique. So first part is to actually understand what's causing the cancer. The next step would be, how do we use that against the cancer? So everybody's cancer is a little bit different, or even a lot different, even though they look the same underneath a microscope.
So how much do we know today, and how much do we need to learn?
The hardest question is we don't know what we don't know. What we've learned, though, is with these 500 genes that can cause cancer, we can sequence them, but even the sequencing, when you're looking at one gene, is a lot of work. Trying to look at 500 genes or even more genes and how they might interact, it gets very complex. So we've gone through sort of a first generation of technology to get sequences. We're now going to a completely different level of complexity to how all of these 25,000 genes that we have interact to, and then where's the Achilles heel in each patient's tumor. So I think the next decade are going to be phenomenal results, but there's a tendency to overpromise results today. It's coming. We are seeing examples of it. If you go down the list of the drugs that were approved for cancer by the FDA this last year, the majority of them are genes that are drugs targeted towards a known molecule, whereas before we were taking chemistry agents off the shelf or bark from a yew tree and finding out that it did something. So there's a drug discovery process or drug design. We know the gene, we know what it looks like. Can we make an antibody to it to shut it down? So it's exploding.
Are there certain cancers that we know more about than others?
There are, and I think, if you have a rare tumor, it's hard to study that tumor or to see how a drug might work in it. So more common cancers like breast cancer, there are a lot of people, there's a lot of money to find a cure for it, and so we know a lot about breast cancer. We've learned there are about 50 genes that cause breast cancer. Not everybody, and everybody may have a different one or a combination of a couple.
One that we hear a lot about in the news is often referred to as the BRCA gene?
Is the BRCA gene, correct. And probably the best studied gene there is, at least in the clinical sciences. And that gene has about, if it was a word, it would have, I think, about 10,000 letters. And so we have to figure out a way to spell that word, make sure it's spelled right to get the correct sequence. And then, like we would take a word and it might be an American version or an English version, they're both normal, even though they might have different sequences. So if we see a different sequence, we have to understand, does that sequence cause cancer? Does that sequence change cause cancer or not? So that's one, and we've learned that pretty much for the BRCA gene, though we're still learning new sequences. Just like we were talking earlier, you've got brown eyes, I've got green eyes. We have different sequences in our eye color gene, but they're both normal. So we have to do that for, all 500 genes that we know cause cancer, and probably for all 25,000 genes that are in our body that cause some other effect.
So how can we learn more about what cancers one of our viewers, for example, would be at risk for because of the research that's being done, and therefore potentially prevent or get an earlier diagnosis because we understand that about them?
So as each field develops, like I said, so melanoma, which Dr. Agarwala does, is very different genetically than breast cancer. So he will be an expert in melanoma, I would be an expert in breast. So trying to find an expert in your field helps a lot. So or a specialist. And then we know people who specialize in the genetics or other components. And then on the clinical trial side, where we've got an idea and the scientists have come up with an idea and they've tested it and it looks like it's promising, but we actually have to see if it works in a real patient, we have to do clinical trials. And unfortunately, not many adults with cancer go on clinical trials. And there's a big push to try to move that forward, because that's the final step, because we may have drugs in development that aren't being tested yet. And if you look at the children that get cancer, the vast majority of children go on clinical trials. We love our kids, we want the very best for them. We need to do that for the adults that we love. So more people on clinical trials will really help. That's probably the slowest step in the process that we could actually do, because the scientists are coming up with all these ideas.
And as we learned, clinical trials are available here in our own community.
They are.
Correct?
We are in our local community. We have lots of clinical trials. Within driving distance, there are, I think, about 1,000 clinical trials for cancer. So, you know, if you have a unique type of cancer or a unique type of breast cancer, it's important for me to know what trials being done at other institutions that people can drive to, because we can't possibly have all 1,000 trials. We'd like to have the ones that will help the most patients, but we also need to be able to get patients to a site where, if there was a trial that we really think is a great trial. So that's sort of, we're in this valley. We can go to New York, we can go to Philadelphia, and there are lots of places around us. But we've done, with competing organizations, sort of trying to always be the best. It's a great thing for the patients in the valley. And so we've got lots of trials.
And you said that the research is not being done just in our region. Of course, this is national and international in its
Correct.
reach.
So like when the Human Genome Project came out and they had the sequence, so everybody started saying, all right, well, let me see what the sequence is for this type of breast cancer. And so there would be a place in France that would be studying one type of breast cancer, and they're getting the samples, and everybody's sort of around the world sending them samples, and they're trying to focus on that project. And then over in America, they're focusing on a different type of breast cancer. And so you've watched this worldwide effort. Really, everybody's working together. And in the last 5 years, you've seen paper after paper come out, and the information's exploding because it's all being shared. And if you know what you're doing, you can go on from your home on your computer and go look up and see what's happening with sequences at different places.
So what's the final word on the story of personalized medicine right now? What should viewers be taking away?
So touch base. If you have a cancer, you know somebody who has a cancer, make sure they're seeing a specialist. Ask them about personalized medicine. Ask them what kinds of things can be done. But you need to take this with a little bit of caution, because we don't want to overpromise the field. And the way to do that probably is try to find a clinical trial that would be relevant for that person to test something. People who are on clinical trials typically do better because they're being compared to the best we know compared to what we think will be better. So I would strongly encourage them to seek out clinical trials.
Thank you so much, Dr. Riley.
Right. Thank you.
Well, in recent years, Lehigh Valley Health Network has expanded its clinical cancer research program through a partnership with the Memorial Sloan Kettering Alliance. Brittany Garzillo recently interviewed the director of the Health Network's Cancer Institute.
Thank you, Laura. I'm joined by Dr. Suresh Nair, the medical director of the Lehigh Valley Health Network Cancer Institute. Dr. Nair, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Well, the Lehigh Valley Health Network Cancer Institute is now a formal member of the Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Alliance. What kind of impact does that have on Lehigh Valley Health Network?
It's had a major impact on all of the cancer patients that are being served by the Lehigh Valley Health Network. It's actually been transformative to patients and families facing cancer in the entire Lehigh Valley and beyond. It's bringing new options that are not available in many parts of the country right here to the Lehigh Valley. It's improving quality of care. It's bringing a lot of hope.
Absolutely. What kind of benefits will it have for patients that are diagnosed with cancer or have family members that are diagnosed?
The first part of the Memorial Sloan Kettering Alliance was making sure that we were aligned across the network with their extremely high standards of care. Sloan Kettering standards of care have been generally 5 years ahead of most of the rest of the country. They have technologies such as DNA profiling that are among the most advanced. All of their processes have been looked at, and they have standards of care, and we had to align all of our standards of care with that. So the first part is that the teamwork between all the doctors, the navigators involved in the care matches that of the teamwork at Sloan Kettering.
In our previous discussions, you mentioned that one of the biggest assets is, of course, the clinical trials. Can you share with us some of the cutting-edge trials?
Sure. So Sloan has close to 1,000 clinical trials, which is among the largest in the world. And their clinical trials are primarily along immune treatments of cancer, immunotherapy, which has been major breakthroughs, and also precision medicine, so targeted treatments to the genes that are causing the cancer in the cell. And over the past year, we've been able to open some of these trials. A lot more of these trials are being opened, and we're able to deliver very personalized, targeted treatments.
You said that the partnership has been going on for several months, about 9. How have patients benefited from this alliance so far?
Sure. So one of the examples is about close to 90 patients at Lehigh Valley in the past year have been part of a study at Sloan called IMPACT. And what IMPACT is we send a small sample of their tumor from a prior biopsy and a tube of blood to, we ship it fresh to Sloan Kettering, and they extract the DNA, and they look for 460 of the most common mutations seen in cancer. Every cell in our body has 20,000 genes, but they found that it's these 460 genes that cause about 95% of the cancer. One patient's tumor might have 1 mutation, another patient's tumor might have 20, 30 mutations, and they have scientists that are studying this. So our patients volunteering to be part of the study are helping Sloan figure out individualized cures, and we get the report back, and then based on that, patients are getting access to free medications as part of clinical trials. We have what are called basket trials from Sloan Kettering, where they're looking at specific mutations and targeting it with an experimental pill. We're also part of a trial that's open right here, which came from Vice President Biden's Moonshot trial. It's a trial called ASCO TAPER, where patients are given medications, targeted medications, based on their mutation analysis.
How is this alliance going to grow, and what will the future of Lehigh Valley Health Network's Cancer Institute look like in the next several years?
Sure. I think this past year, the number of clinical trials open at the network and that patients have access to have gone up from 50 to almost 200. Wow. And part of this is we have three different portfolio of trials. One is government trials from the National Cancer Institute. We're part of an NCI group out of Ann Arbor, Michigan called the NCORP. The other, we're part of a lot of immunotherapy treatments directly with pharmaceutical companies. These are very cutting-edge treatments. And we have frontline immunotherapy trials in almost all the major cancers. And then the biggest part is the Sloan Kettering trials themselves. And as our ability to bring on more and more trials improves, most patients will find something, especially patients with currently incurable stage 4 cancers will find trials that might fit them. Dr. Baselga, who's the physician-in-chief of Sloan, he's fond of saying there will never be a cure for cancer. Then he pauses for effect, and then he'll say there's going to be 1 million cures. And these trials are a way to find, we may find a needle in a haystack in the Lehigh Valley, and we already have so far with our work so far.
For people who are looking for those cures that may be recently diagnosed with cancer, have cancer, or have loved ones with cancer, what is your advice to them?
I think you get yourself information. I think getting opinions, multiple opinions, is helpful, and some of this information, it takes a long time to go through the community. So I think in terms of our partnership with Sloan Kettering, we're able to co-manage patients with MSK colleagues. With about close to 1,000 oncologists at Sloan Kettering, there's no case that's really rare at MSK anymore. We have patients that come in with rare cancers at Lehigh Valley Health Network, and we're able to partner, video conference, and try to co-manage and get the best results.
Certainly a lot of hope for the future. Dr.
Yes.
Nair, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brittany, and thank you for watching. We'll see you next week. Until then, remember to focus on what matters. This program is recorded at the PPL Public Media Center at PBS 39 in Bethlehem. This episode of Focus is part of the PBS 39 Checkup, a health and wellness initiative sponsored by Capital Blue Cross.